Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at a pretty incredible paradox. Now, admirers like to call this organization the Pentagon's brain, while critics call it the beating heart of the military-industrial complex. But really, no matter where you stand on that, there is absolutely no denying that the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or as we all know it, DARPA, is the most powerful and productive military science agency in the entire world. I mean, they literally pioneer the future. But the paradox here is exactly how they pull this off. Because when you look under the hood, the way DARPA manages its research projects is completely unlike anything else in the government. To really understand this, we're pulling our insights today directly from Annie Jacobson's uncensored history book, The Pentagon's Brain. She interviewed dozens of uniquely affiliated people, everyone from presidential science advisors to four-star generals. So this declassified source material is going to give us an unprecedented, behind-the-scenes look into how this notoriously secretive agency actually ticks. Okay, let's dive right in. We have to start with the central mystery driving this explainer today. How does an agency with absolutely zero scientific laboratories of its own manage to invent the future? DARPA, as a government agency, does not conduct its own scientific research. Let that sink in for a second. The exact same organization responsible for laying the groundwork for the internet, GPS, and stealth technology doesn't actually have internal scientists tinkering away in DARPA-owned labs. So how is that even possible? Well, the first big piece of this puzzle is resources. DARPA commands an annual budget of roughly $3 billion. That is a massive, massive amount of capital dedicated entirely to research and development. But if they aren't spending all that money on their own in-house labs, who exactly is managing this huge war chest? Get ready for a shockingly small number: 120. For 6 decades, DARPA has employed, on average, just 120 program managers a year. That's it. A tiny, elite group of highly entrepreneurial leaders, most of whom are pretty accomplished scientists themselves, personally controlling a $3 billion budget. So, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to break down this unique structure by looking at 1. The engine of surprise, 2. The 120 program managers, 3. The contractor network, 4. Funding high-risk failure, and finally, 5. Steering the future. Let's start with part 1, the engine of surprise. To really grasp how DARPA manages research, you have to go back to 1958. They were created with one single foundational mandate: to ensure the United States is never again taken by scientific surprise. You know, like they were when the Soviets launched Sputnik. And nothing illustrates their approach to this better than something former DARPA director Stephen Lukasik said in the early 1970s. He emphasized that the agency has to focus entirely on pre-requirement research. It's the ultimate chicken and egg problem, right? DARPA has to solve problems before the military even realizes those problems exist. Because if you wait until a technological need actually pops up on the battlefield, well, you're already too late. And because of that intense mandate, DARPA scientists in classified programs are usually operating 10 to 20 years ahead of whatever technology is out there in the public domain. Think about it. A revolution isn't a revolution unless it comes with the element of surprise. Just for context, DARPA started developing unmanned aerial vehicles way back in the early 1960s. So by the time armed drones actually appeared on the battlefield in 2001 and the public finally learned about them, that tech had already advanced by multiple generations completely in secret. Moving on to part 2, the 120 program managers. Now, to maintain that crazy 2-decade lead on the rest of the world, you need an extraordinarily unique type of manager. Those 120 program managers we mentioned, they are the pistons of DARPA's engine. And the crucial thing here is how DARPA's setup completely flips traditional government models upside down. On one side, you have the standard military chain of command, right? It's bureaucratic, it's slow, it's totally tangled in red tape. But on the other side, you've got DARPA's model. These program managers are brought in for really short tenures, usually just around 5 years. But during those 5 years, they are handed an insane degree of authority. They can start, continue, or kill research projects with almost zero outside intervention. The whole thing is designed purely for entrepreneurial agility and incredibly fast execution. Which brings us to part 3, the contractor network. So if DARPA managers have extreme authority and billions of dollars to play with, but absolutely no laboratories of their own, who is actually building this stuff? Well, they build it through a massive, sprawling network of outside entities. Program managers go out and hire defense contracting giants, think places like the Rand Corporation, Boeing, General Dynamics. They tap into elite academic minds like the highly secretive Jason scientists, and they utilize these massive classified national laboratories like Los Alamos in New Mexico. So you actually have tens of thousands of scientists and engineers all across America and overseas doing the physical work, all being funded and directed by those 120 DARPA managers. Here is the exact four-step life cycle of how this whole thing plays out. First, a program manager sitting in an office in Virginia initiates a really bold project. Second, they deploy their budget to hire the right outside contractors to actually build the thing. Third, that brand new technology undergoes rigorous field testing. And fourth, once it's successful, DARPA facilitates the transition of that tech directly over to the Army, Navy, Air Force, or intelligence agencies like the CIA and NSA. Basically, DARPA dreams it up, proves it works, and then hands it off.
Next up, Part 4, Funding High-Risk Failure.
Getting to that successful handoff brings us to what might be the most surprising part of their entire management philosophy. They actively embrace failure. Listen to this incredible story from the source material. Back in 1983, Captain Jack Thorpe pitched an unprecedented idea for a revolutionary computer training program called SimNet to a DARPA official named Larry Lin. Lin listens and asks how much it would cost to build this synthetic world. Thorpe looks at him and says, $17 million. And Lin just replies, let's do it. Boom. Instantly approved, no endless committees to win over, just immediate execution of a high-risk $17 million idea. Former program manager Joe Mangano summed this up perfectly. He said, DARPA, unlike most agencies, is allowed to fail some fraction of the time. To refocus the agency on hard science back in the 1970s, they committed entirely to high-risk projects of revolutionary impact. Because the truth is, you literally cannot invent the future if you're terrified of failing. DARPA's whole management structure is built to tolerate and honestly even expect failure. It's just seen as the necessary price you pay for technological dominance. Finally, Part 5, Steering the Future. So how does this high-risk, fail-forward management style handle the incredibly complex and controversial scientific frontiers of today? The source material makes a pretty impartial observation here about the stark contrast between DARPA's public image and its classified reality. If you look at the press, DARPA regularly promotes unclassified programs focused on health and wellness. We're talking robotic prosthetics that are delicate enough to pick up a single grape, or tiny implants that help the human body heal itself. Amazing stuff. But on the classified side, DARPA's stated mission is still advancing weapons systems. So those exact same non-invasive brain-computer interfaces being developed for health, they are also a core part of highly classified programs like augmented cognition. The goal there is to create human-machine biohybrids, basically accelerating the cognitive thinking power of soldiers and intelligence operatives so they can detect targets faster in hostile environments. It's dual-use technology, and DARPA managers are aggressively pursuing both sides in secret. Which leaves us with this final, really profound question raised by the source material. How close to the line can we get and still control what we create? DARPA's management structure, the fact that it's so agile, deeply funded, heavily reliant on contractors, and inherently secretive, pretty much guarantees they are going to keep inventing the future. But as this technology rapidly outstrips what the general public even knows exists, the ethical implications of this innovation engine are going to remain a massive subject of debate. Just think about that for a second. When you have an agency operating 2 full decades ahead of the rest of us, who is ultimately steering the wheel? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the future.